Get ready to plunge into the electrifying world of tech news with the Next Tech Check podcast. Hosted by SmartTech Research's Mark Vena and NextCurve's Leonard. This podcast offers bold insights, controversial debates, and monitors the pulse of innovation. It's the only podcast committed to keeping what's next in tech in check.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Vena, CEO and Principal Analyst at SmartTech Research. And this is Leonard, Founder and Executive Analyst at NextCurve. Today is Monday, September 18th, 2023. Welcome to the Next Tech Check podcast, where we talk about interesting topics, controversial topics. We had a great conversation, Leonard and I, last week about the Apple announcement, but we're past that. We want to talk about some big news. It's actually not new news because it happened about 10 days ago, but we want to talk about the Arm IPO. But before we get into that, Leonard, what's going on? What's on your mind? What's on your slate for today? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm flying to San Jose for Intel's innovation, and I'll be spending a week with them. Well, most of the week with folks at Intel and some other fellow analysts, and we're going to get the lowdown on what's new at Intel. So yes, looking forward to that.
So let's jump into this Arm IPO thing. Pretty significant, out of the gate. I think they got a valuation after the stock closed.
Yep.
I think it was $66 or $67 billion. Not too bad. Pretty big from a business standpoint. I really don't want to talk about the business aspects. Let's talk about
not the financial market and valuation aspect. I think we talk about the business and the technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So exactly. Yeah. So
avoid all that other stuff.
Yeah. So the thing that's interesting to me about Arm is that, first of all, most people, again, I always look at things through the lens of a consumer or someone who's buying an end user product. And, you and I know who Arm is. Our brethren know who Arm is. But the average person doesn't know who Arm is. And I think Arm is just fine with that, by the way. The interesting thing is I saw a number that they have something in the neighborhood of 97, 98 of the smartphone projects out there, the design share, if you look at it from a share.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a dominating position. That's not when you have in business, when you have 98% of anything, that's a big number. But what's always been intriguing to me, that I think the average consumer or average end user who maybe not be into the technology would appreciate, is that without a company like Arm, a lot of the device makers in play would not have a presence, because they just don't have the capability of, from an engineering and development standpoint, designing their own silicon. And I think that's what Arm ultimately brings to the table. They've been able to enable companies like Apple, who has Apple silicon. Apple has their own value on top of it, but under normal circumstances, and designing a processor, an SoC, is an enormous undertaking, let alone the manufacturing aspects. That's a completely different subject, because they're a fabless type of organization. They deal in a fabless manner. But give me your perspective of Arm, what do you think the big news coming out of this in terms of what does it mean to you?
They're a highly misunderstood company in a lot of ways. I've seen them characterized as a design company, which is not entirely accurate, and almost suggesting that they actually make chips or design chips. Well, to your point, Apple, Qualcomm, MediaTek, all these companies that are fabless,
the list goes on, right?
These are the ones who do the design, and there are also specific design houses who take Arm IP. So what Arm does is they have intellectual property, these designs that they've engineered that are baseline blueprints for all these different chips that now chip designers as well as fabless companies can mix and match in designing their own purpose-built processors and semiconductors devices. So I think in order to really understand Arm, you have to understand the semiconductor value chain or industry chain very well. And, the semiconductor industry is so complex, and it's difficult for most folks, I think, without some background and understanding and this like sort of mental map of how the industry is structured to really understand the role of ARM. And, I think in the context of NVIDIA's bid to purchase ARM a few years ago, right?
No, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because there's a soap opera aspect of that.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, and so ARM, IPOing here is an important thing for the company. I think they've set a huge, very high bar for themselves, given going back to what is their role in the overall semiconductor industry and what they need to commit to make good on what we're looking at here in the IPO. So. It's going to be, Rene Haas has his work cut out for him. But that being said, ARM is doing some really interesting things in terms of how they continue to drive the evolution of computing. The way that we think about computing systems, because they were like one of the companies to really go to market with this idea of heterogeneous computing, and it's something that I mentioned in our first episode, right? Integration and packaging, that's further down the line, but taking advantage of these new ways of designing and building chips and pushing that into other domains. So now we see them playing in PCs as well as data center, where they traditionally were, like you said, known for smartphones because they basically have the entire market for smartphones.
But it's interesting that, and you use a phrase that I don't want the audience to ignore, this whole notion of purpose-built capability. And as an product guy from years ago, when I was at Compaq or Dell, I mean, you had no alternative. And that wasn't a PC context, of course. Yeah. But you had to use Intel, and let's face it, the reason why we partnered with guys like AMD at the time was to have leverage. You never want to use a solution. I don't care what the solution is, but you never want to implement, if you're a manufacturer, a solution that can only be provided by a single manufacturer. And I think what ARM has done, again, how the world has changed in 25 years, is that it is now possible to utilize these SoCs, putting all the drama that you rightfully, kind of present. It's very colorful stuff. Maybe there'll be a great TV movie made one day about
eventually.
But getting that, making this a little bit of a serious conversation. I think what's interesting is that there are products coming to market that would not be possible with general purpose processors. I mean, let's face it. And by the way, we keep talking about smartphones, but we're talking, IoT devices. And we talked a little on the sidelines about now there are ARM versions of Windows that obviously can run on ARM in a virtual manner, or even a direct manner. Qualcomm obviously has a play there, of course. But to me, this is going to be interesting. And the buzzword, we have to bring this up. I mean, I think right now with all this AI,
he said
it. I was going to say it. And by the way, you said something that I thought about this after we did the podcast. And I like what you said last week, is that it's important for people not to confuse AI and Gen AI and kind of converge the topics, because they're really two separate topics. Gen AI is kind of the flashy, bright, shiny object, but I hate to kind of.
Well, they're related, definitely. In fact,
sure they are related.
The way we have to think about it is Gen AI is a subset of a broader AI. And I love that you're bringing this up, because you know what? Ask anybody what do they mean by AI. You will get like the weirdest answers. And right. Most people should be saying, you know what, I don't really know. Yet what they do is they continue to have these discussions around AI with some odd notions of what it actually is and its relationship to, like, let's say, deep learning and such, and then and ML, right? And so what is Gen AI? And so some people think that Gen AI is everything. It has a certain purpose. it's been something in the works for a long time. But yeah, you know what? I'm going to let you say what you were going to say about AI. So what is it that you want to talk about, about ARM in relations to AI?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting, especially now that the ARM folks, this IP thing is over. I think it will be interesting to see the way they deploy AI in their products, and their solutions. And to your point, they are kind of a misunderstood company because by itself, you cannot. Well, you can, but you really don't add a lot of value. Taking a pure ARM-based design without you adding any value to it as the manufacturer, as a Samsung might do, or as Apple may do. Apple's probably the best example because Apple wants people to believe that they're designing these processors from soup to nuts when they're not, of course. But they do add a lot of value to it.
I mean, they have what's called an architectural license agreement with ARM, which is different from which is what most folks have, which is a technology license agreement. So Apple does a lot of customization. They have their own core designs that leverage ARM IP. And so this is why, ARM is such a difficult to understand company, and what they do, their products. But they do AI. So we talked about this last week, Edge AI. Apple has been, and Qualcomm have been leading this charge on on-device AI on the smartphone. I mean, think about it. Your camera, Apple has the Bionic. They have a neural engine. Qualcomm, Snapdragon has a neural engine, Hexagon. These are all things that are related to the ARM and its role in supporting these kind of companies. So, ARM itself has Mali. They have their own GPUs. They have accelerators, and they're expanding the portfolio, right? So they're supporting, other brands through their, other chip makers through their TLAs and their, let's say, custom, portfolio of IP. So it's there. Again, going back to what do you mean by are they doing AI or not doing AI? Yeah, they've been involved with AI for a long time. The question is what is the real AI story? And I think a lot of it is this attachment to NVIDIA, because NVIDIA, I wrote about this a long time ago, actually, maybe 3 years ago now, in Fiercely Electronics about Project Grace. And what that's something that NVIDIA initiated while in the midst of going through the process of getting regulatory approvals for the acquisition of ARM. Well, guess what? That was NVIDIA's collaboration with ARM at that time. Remember, they're kind of tight, right? They have a good relationship to build what you can consider AI computing device or appliance or architecture based on ARM CPU, okay, that works in conjunction with NVIDIA GPUs.
Right.
So,
well, this is going to be, we're going to revisit this topic, I'm sure, again in the near future. We're kind of running out of time here because we want to keep to a pithy level. But I think this is going to be interesting. This is a big deal. This is not insignificant. We try to cover the topics that are a pretty big significance, and this is certainly on that list of topics. But in any event, this has been great. Again, I don't expect anything less. Let me bring up our little closing slide here. Please, again, thanks for watching the next Tech Check podcast with Leonard and myself. We're very excited to have you folks aboard. Please make sure that you hit the like and subscribe buttons at the end of this podcast. We'd love to have you follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at the handles below, and we'll go from there. And again, thanks again, Leonard, and we'll be in touch soon.
Take care.